What is a supernatural event that happened in your life that just cannot be explained? One night I had a dream about my grandpa, who had died almost 20 years prior. We were in his home, and he kept telling me, "We need to clean the house, we need to get the house ready." When I asked him why, he just said, "She's coming home." My grandma, his wife of 50 years, died the next day. Had a premonition I'd be involved in a car accident one morning on the way to work as I got out of bed. It was a very strange thought and I considered taking an alternate route but did not. As I got onto the highway it was raining and a car flew past me, hydroplaned, and slammed into my car. Woke up in the middle of the night to a man standing next to the bed staring at my so. He was slightly translucent and I figured it was just another sleep paralysis episode. Had them before so knew the drill, and rolled over and went to go back to sleep. Normally being able to move isn't part of sleep paralysis, and immediately my heart began to race as I realized I need to roll over and check what I saw. Person was still standing there, staring at my so, then he made eye contact with me. Stared at me for a while before turning around and walking to the wall, slowly fading away with each step. Next morning significant other wakes up looking like shit and said she had the worst night's sleep because she kept having the feeling that someone was watching her. Glad we no longer live in that house. I was about 15 and trying to sleep but having an asthma attack. Late in the night I started hearing a rhythmic breathing from the floor next to the bed. It wasn't scary, more comforting. And it wasn't me, because my breathing sounded way more fucked up than that. It helped me calm down and get to sleep. Even though I was still sick, I was able to get my hands on an inhaler in the morning. At the time I thought it was a friendly ghost. I later rationalized that maybe I was hearing a family member through the heating ducts. What I realized years later, when I had a dog, was that it had sounded exactly like a big dog sleeping next to the bed. So now I'm 50-50 on whether a ghost dog came to visit me, or my own dog time traveled back about 10 years before she was born to comfort me. I had a sort of demonic mask on my shelf, and one day while I was working at my desk no more than 4 feet away from it, it just flew off the shelf and shattered on the floor. It didn't just fall off the shelf, it was like someone threw it across the room. The baffling part to me is that I am the one who made the mask. So I know it's not cursed by some voodoo hex or something. I've had extremely vivid dreams of relatively inconsequential moments in my future life that I nonetheless keep locked away in a little corner of my head. And then when those moments actually occur, I get insane déjà vu that throws me off until I remember the dreams. It's a very bizarre thing, but it ultimately doesn't mean much to me. And edit since this seems to have blown up. Thank you everyone for sharing your similar experiences with this. And also thank you to those of you attempting to explain what could be going on when the events occur, no matter your stance on it. It's fascinating reading some of the details on what might cause it, or whether it's just some trick of the mind. It's very informative. Was in college walking to class. Went to cross a busy street and a hand grabbed my shoulder, quite hard, and stopped me. A car zoomed by that would have killed me. Nobody was behind me or anywhere close enough to have stopped me. Guardian angel? There's a story from when I was 4 or 5 years old. My grandmother was looking through old family photos and asking me who the people were. We got to a picture of my grandfather, and she asked me who he was, and I said, Poppy Jim. He died suddenly at home when my mother was 10, in the same house we lived in, so I never met him. She asked me how I knew that. I told her, "Oh, he comes and tucks me in and tells me he loves me sometimes after you go to bed." Super minor compared to many in this thread. Night before Thanksgiving 3 years ago I was across the country at my parents', driving back to theirs with my now wife from a friend's house. As we draw near, there is some type of bundle in the middle of the road. I stopped and pulled off to move it, and it turned out to be a barred owl that got clipped by a car. Long story short, I spent the rest of that night getting the owl into a puppy cage, gave it some food and water, and the next day dropped it off at a wildlife rescue center. I got home the next week, all the way across the country, New Jersey to Oregon. I stepped outside and there was a barred owl sitting on my fence watching me. It was gone by the time I got back. But now I know I'm straight with all owls. My siblings and I all had the same dream on the same night a year ago. It was exactly 1 year after my mum died and we all had a dream about her and she was in the same place and was speaking to us. She reassured us that she was okay and she was with her mum and my dead siblings and that her dad is in the bad place. The next day we all realized we had the same dream. We even all independently drew a picture of the place we saw her and wrote down the name of the place it resembled. Most of my siblings took that as an actual message from my mum, but my youngest sister and I like to believe that we have all developed some freaky hive mind low-level telepathy lol. When I was 12 I woke up with a start at 2:30 in the morning. I wasn't dreaming and didn't know why I woke up. My parents told me the next morning that my grandfather had had a heart attack and went for emergency surgery. He died at 2:30 in the morning. Very minor, but I still go, what the fuck? When I remember. When I was a kid, around 6, I lived in a very arid area, and a wide field of red dirt was between my house and my buds. Every day, walking over there, when I got about halfway across, I'd pick up a dirt clod or a small rock, and toss it behind me over my shoulder. About 10 seconds later, it would come flying back over my head and land in front of me. I'd just grin and keep walking. I remember this really distinctly, even trying to replicate it later in childhood after I'd moved away, and being sad that it didn't work anymore. Didn't question it as a kid, but looking back, just really weird. Also my job site is haunted, but this seems stranger. I have many, but here's the first that popped in my head. I was driving home from work after picking up my baby late at night. Not many cars around out on the country roads. The one stoplight out there was red for me, so I stop. It turns green and have a sudden voice or thought or whatever in my head saying don't go yet. Nothing is coming. I'm still sitting at the green light. Right as I let off the brake, a semi comes flying through his red light. I was shook. Well, when I was around 6 years old I was walking down the stairs, no one was behind me, and all of a sudden I remember getting chills, then feeling a faint hand on my shoulder before I got basically pushed down the stairs. I was alright, a few cuts and bruises, nothing serious, but I still remember the feeling of the invisible hand on my shoulder. It haunts me. We had a kitten-producing cat when I was about 6 or 7 years old. We knew it had kittens since it was pregnant for a while and then wasn't. We had no idea where the kittens were, which was an issue. I was curious about it and looked right at the cat, thinking to myself, where are your kittens? But without saying anything, if that makes sense. My imagination immediately went to the location. Our cat could jump into it from pillars on the side of the porch through some damaged boards right above our porch. I knew they were around. I dashed over there, mounted the stone pillar, and peered through the gap in the boards. The kittens were right in front of me. I've never experienced another event like it in my entire life. The night my friend took his own life I had a sudden urge to call him. I'm in Canada and he was in Atlanta at the time. I didn't call because I was out partying with friends and got the news the next day when I woke up. I feel like I missed the chance to save a friend, but my dad says it was him letting me know he was gone but was going to be okay. I'm sorry I didn't reach out, bud. I regret it all the time. My son, now 10, was 4 and was able to name my grandmother, by name, by a picture of her when she was in her 20s that was in storage that my mom and I were going through. She died before my wife and I even met. He said she was the lady who taught him how to do his silly laugh. Context: his silly laugh, as we called it, was a laugh that sounded just like my grandmother's. The reason it was so specific and silly was that my grandmother had a brain aneurysm when my mom was in her teens. It paralyzed the left of her body, including vocal cords and lips, and gave her a very distinct and odd-sounding laugh. This didn't happen to me, but a very nice old man and his wife used to live a few streets over from us. Well, she got very sick and his son flew in to help watch and care for her. A few weeks later she moved to hospice and later died. The night she died, her husband and son drive home and they were talking about what to do for the funeral, and the husband asked, "Do you think she'd want some person to attend?" And they both said they heard the dead wife in the back seat say, "No thank you." I dreamed the sequel to The Matrix years before it came out. I don't even think it had been announced yet. But that scene where Neo fights a Jillian Smiths in the playground. I had explained it in detail to my wife after I had the dream, and we were both kind of taken aback seeing it on the screen. What a useless glimpse of the future. Rolling on the floor laughing. Not me, but my mother. She tells 2 stories. One time her doctor changed her blood pressure meds. It caused her to pass out on the kitchen floor. She had a near-death experience that's similar to what a lot of people describe. The tunnel of light, dead family members coming to see her, incredible feeling of joy, etc. My uncle, her brother, was maybe 10 years older than her. Back in the 60s, he had a boat and used to take it from Florida to the Bahamas. It was a trip he had made many times. One day he left in the boat and vanished. A short time after, she was at work, and her phone rang. It was a woman. "Is this Carol?"
Yes.
I just wanted you to know that your brother died an honorable death." Then the woman hung up.